Alright, so we're back once again, and today we're going to be going over 5 of the, what I would consider, beginner mistakes that a lot of players, well, myself included, I see making in World of Warships. Now these things might be mistakes that you're more familiar with, and some of them might not be, but we're going to go through them anyways. If you want to see me make some of these mistakes in real time, I do stream every day on twitch.tv/darkcoin, so check it out if you wish. But with that being said, let's get into it. So the first mistake I want to touch on, and this might be one of the more unintuitive ones, I guess, but it's playing too much. Now, I know what you're thinking. I just started playing World of Warships. I love the game. I'm addicted. I'm going to play it a lot. Well, that kind of leads to maybe two possible scenarios. One, you play it a lot. You develop really bad habits, and as a result, later on, when you've developed when you've played about 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 games, you've ingrained some very bad habits, like shooting HE on a Yamato, that you have to go all the way back to the start and basically break those habits and then re-establish good habits so that you can actually learn to play the game properly, like shooting AP on a Yamato. The second scenario is basically, if you're going to play a lot, you're pretty highly heighten the chances of you burning out very quickly. Now, this has happened to me several times. I go through a period of where I get basically addicted to the game, and I play probably 4 hours a day for maybe a week or so. And after that week, I get so burned out that I decide I'm never going to play the game again, and then I lose all the progress in terms of actual muscle memory and skill, and like knowing how to position myself on the map after maybe 2-3 weeks. And then when I pick the game up, it becomes a lot harder for that muscle memory to come back, and basically I just start from a place of much lower skill. So ideally what you'd want to do is just a little bit every day, maybe a couple of games a day, is generally what I would consider the best, most efficient way to learn the game, while not kind of overcompensating or over-indexing too much into playing it and either developing bad habits or just burning out completely. So with that being said, I think it's generally not a big problem most new players are going to face, but it's still something to be considered when you do decide to pick up the game for the very first time. The second mistake I want to touch on is basically something that's pretty unique to World of Warships, and that's playing way too many different ships. I might be able to be convinced on this, and I see a lot of people suggesting that you should play a lot of different ships at the start of the game to get an idea of what you like and what you don't like, and sure, that's fine and well, but from my perspective, my aim is to just improve and get better at the game significantly as quickly as possible. And so if you're going to be switching from, say, British light cruisers to German BBs to Russian CVs, sorry, they're not in the game yet, to US BBs to, I don't know, UK DDs, these are all very distinctly different ships. And in my impression, that's basically the same thing as learning the guitar one day, learning how to run long distance the next day, learning how to deadlift the next day. These things are all very distinct skill sets. I'm sure a lot of it is overlapping, but again, you're learning different ship lines that require different skill sets, that require different positioning, that require different aiming abilities, different speeds. These are all very distinct different things, and so when you switch constantly between different ships, you're going to get a very clouded view of the game. Whereas if you pick a cruiser line, a BB line, and a DD line, sure, you can experiment a little bit at the very early tiers, say 1, 2, or 3, to see which line you prefer the most. But then after that, you should generally pick one of those 3 lines for each class, or 1 line for each class, and then grind those to tier 10. It's going to give you a much more quick and grounded view of that class overall, and of course, you're going to have tier 10 battles available, which is pretty invaluable because, let's be honest, low tiers are a bit of a mess in terms of actual gameplay. So if you stick to tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, you're generally going to have a much better time and actually experience what the game's about, as opposed to just messing around trying to figure out which ship is the best for you at tier 5 or tier 6. With that being said, let's move on to the third point, or the third mistake I see people make, and that's playing difficult to play ships. Now, I don't actually touch on this all that often, but there is certain ships in the game that even I, in my infinite skill level, which doesn't really exist, decide that I'm just not good enough to play. These can differ from different players. I know a lot of players that are very, very skilled at very difficult ships, but newer or more basic ships, shall we say, are very difficult for them to play. Personally, for me, the Yamato is something I can really, really get my head around, and I can really dial in how to play that ship. An example of the ship that I can't really learn how to play are generally heavy cruisers. The playstyle is something that I'm just not able to grasp effectively, so I do stay away from those ships. Now, there might come a time later down the line where I invest a significant amount of time to learning how to play those ships, but right now it's not all that good for me to invest a significant amount of time when I'm still trying to get my base level of gameplay up to a decent standard. So that's something I think you really should be conscious of, and it might incorporate into the second point, where playing difficult to play ships might actually impede your progress, because you're going to be focusing on things like radar or things like, short duration smokes, when really you should just be learning how to shoot, how to aim, and how to position. So take that into consideration. Number four is going to be a general mistake. I'm not even sure if you consider this a mistake, but something that you need to be conscious of when you actually do play the games, and that's autopilot or tilting. It's kind of two things in one, but they do tie into each other. So firstly, autopiloting. I think we're all familiar with what autopiloting is. Basically zoning out when the game starts and not zoning back in until you see your ship getting detonated. Autopiloting can basically completely impede your progress in the game, and I don't think there's any other thing that really stops you from learning so significantly as just zoning out and not actually paying attention to what's happening on the map. And then when you do zone out, and when you do die stupidly by not paying attention to what's happening either on the minimap or even in front of your screen, it leads to the second component, which is tilting. And then that, in and of itself, follows yourself into the next game, and you are already into the next game feeling angry and not able to play your best, which again only adds to the bad plays, and the cycle continues and continues and continues. So again, autopilot, paying attention, situational awareness, realizing what ships are on the enemy team and where they are is very, very important, and something you should be considering and taking into consideration from basically low tiers. There's no reason not to be doing this, and it's probably going to be one of the, if not the most valuable skill that's actually going to help you make good plays in the game. So take that into consideration. And moving on to the final thing, or the final point, shall we say, is not playing to your ship's strength. Now, I see this happen very often. Be it a Yamato that thinks it's basically a Pomeran and tries to 1v1 a Pomeran and then ends up dying. Definitely not based on one of my ranked games. Or you can have Shimikazes who think they're basically Kitakazes and have a bit of an identity crisis and end up trying to 1v1 them, which again doesn't end as well as you'd expect. So, not playing to your ship's strength is pretty much surely a simple mistake that could be rectified by, watching a YouTube video of how the ship's meant to be played, or learning what not to do very basically from dying over and over again. But nevertheless, I do see many times people not really playing into the strong aspects of their ship. How many times do I see torpedo players or torpedo boat players getting way too close to enemy radars and getting lit up for absolutely no reason when they don't need to be that close? Strangely enough, DD players tend to play into this role a lot more often than BB players, but I think that's just more of a proximity thing. There is a startling propensity, or I've noticed a lot of BB players starting to use HE at the start of a game, or starting to use HE in general, which is truly bizarre. And I don't know if it's a consequence of the HE spamming meta, or if it's some other aspect, but it is starting to get very troubling, and that's just another aspect on the BB side and not so much the DD side. Again, this is going to be something that's, if you're a budding DD player, is something you're going to want to be considerate of. So this is pretty much sums it up for another video. I hope you enjoyed. This is a fairly quick video that I just wanted to get out, and I just wanted to spitball to an extent. But with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.